Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great to have you here. It worked.
It seems to be working. Yeah. We've got that in our favor.
Yeah. Who would have ever thought?
That's an interesting delay.
Yeah, you can't watch it. Don't try to watch it and do it at the same
Yeah,
time.
that's right.
No, it's bizarre.
Well, thanks for being here. So we just listened to your first 3 tracks. So, but before we get into why Deborah's doing what she does, why don't you tell us? Can you tell us a little bit about the last 3 tracks? So what did we just hear? Could you talk about maybe the inspiration behind those tracks and maybe get into a bit about the instrumentation?
Deb?
Well, we started, of course, with the title track, HEMISPHERICA PORTALIS, which translates to the portal of 1,000 years. That's why I'm in my jalaba and my foreign stuff here, but just to support that. We recorded Dean several flute tracks. He played beautifully on a concert flute, and then in the processing that happened later, layered them together and then wove some textures and other things with it, some guitar ambient parts. And it's a very meditative piece. It's meant to be otherworldly as far as my thematic thoughts on it. Dean was a little more on the technical side with it, but compositionally we both agreed that it was very much meant to be kind of an otherworldly opening, which is the portal of 1,000 years basically lends itself to that. It's, there's so much out there in the sci-fi world and the fantasy world, and we've been seeing a lot of the Star Wars and Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets and all of these different movies that lend themselves to this kind of. Dune is just my favorite. I love that movie, the original Dune, and it takes you into other worlds with other individuals, even though they seem human. So it's all very familiar, yet it's very alien at the same time. So we were trying to capture that. And Dean, I know you probably have some comments on that too.
I do. Well, for anyone who might have been following a lot of the interviews we've done regarding this project, it might be obvious that Deborah and I, it's like parallel universes meeting together to create this thing. We're coming from 2 completely different places, and that's kind of what makes the magic of this. I definitely see, I can easily associate science fiction aesthetic and references to what we do, simply by the technological, default of the methodology, the type of gear we're using, and the type of sound it is. So that, I guess that's there inherently. But for me, there was definitely an exploration in the more sonic side of, I guess, some of the raw ideas, at least in regards to those first 3 tracks that we just heard. Like, they ended up a lot different than how they started. And hats off to Deborah for that, because she actually pleasantly surprised me, especially on track 1, what she did to my flute. And that was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different tracks of me just soloing freestyle with the flute in 1 key, and she took it and she made this kind of overture with it. She made this kind of, not just in terms of how she edited the notation, but in terms of what she did sonically, all these effects, reverses, and things like that, which I was pleasantly surprised. As far as the other 2 tracks, I just think that they are, for me personally, they're a refreshing combination, like dichotomy of two types of instrumentation that wouldn't usually be seen together. One more kind of aesthetically pleasing, and the other a little more maybe ominous, dark, or raw, or however you want to refer to the combining of our two personalities in these tracks.
Well, so that's interesting that you end on that, because so we have a question. Bruce sends in. He wanted to ask, what was your experience working together, as it seems you have different approaches to making music? And that's true, right? You come from very different musical, stylistic worlds, totally different, opposite ends of the spectrum almost in a way. So what was that? What was
Absolutely.
that like, blending those two things, like the experimental with a more structured sound?
I think we had a lot of fun working together. It was very spontaneous. We had no idea what was going to happen. We had talked over the last few years about one day we were definitely wanting to work on something together, just because it would be a fun thing to try and see what would happen. And it finally happened. And I have I do have a very vivid imagination, and I've always believed whatever you can think of, you can accomplish or do. And so I started making up a bunch of stuff because I was stressing when I knew Dean was coming. I said, oh my God, I have to have something ready. I can't have this fabulous musician show up and me have nothing prepared. So I started plugging stuff in the studio because I had been dusting and moving stuff around, and I was having trouble getting everything plugged back in. And I'm like, oh my God. So I went into my fantasy side and started talking to my equipment, and these weird names started popping up while I was talking to myself. And so I started writing them down, and Dean showed up, and I go, Dean, I have to talk to you. We have this, what do you think of these names? And he thought I was, well, I don't remember. You thought I was a little crazy, but then you said, oh, I like that.
It's like you've made up your own language.
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah. And I don't personally, I wouldn't refer to it as structured music. It's very free form. I think it's a lot freer than what Deborah and I are used to. If you listen to our solo albums, we have these arrangements and sections, and we full compositions. So this was kind of a departure from that, where I think we were both able to just kind of let go and kind of just relax in the fact that this is a collaboration, let go of the pressure of it, and just flow kind of. And again, Deborah did most of the production on it, and I wanted her to, because it was a tough couple of years for me. So I sensed that kind of liberation from pressure in the production she did as well as the parts that I played that she recorded. It was just really loose, and refreshing way.
Right.
Well,
go ahead, Deborah.
I'm sorry.
Well, what I wanted to say was just to tie in with what Dean was talking about, the parts that he did, because we did it all together. We were in this in my studio for a couple of weeks, and we just played and tried everything and anything. And then after he left, I had to go back and listen to everything. But what made it so wonderful to do was the parts and all of the things that Dean had created lent themselves to this incredible phrasing that I was able to do with everything. And the flutes were a perfect example on that first piece. He had these flute tracks that I just recorded him playing the flute. And then after he left, I started listening to each of the separate tracks. And of course, there was minor editing, not much at all. But as I listened to it, I thought, well, what would happen if I were to rephrase some of the passages that he played? And the way he played it, it lent itself perfectly to be able to do that. I think phrasing is so important in any kind of music. And with all the parts that we had, it needed to tell a story. And to tell the story, it had to be put in an order of, you start at the beginning and then you have to flow to the next step, and then what happens after that. And it was very, very easy to do with what we had come up with, I think. It was great.
That's
Yeah.
yeah, very good point. Yeah.
So we have a few other questions that have been asked. We'll jump around a little bit if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next one, Ben Bell is asking, has your music ever been featured on Echoes? So we all know the answer to that.
Yeah,
So
quite a bit.
so yeah, in fact, you know, the release was just featured. I think John DiLiberto did a review and an interview, right, on the podcast. So
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yes.
that's he actually did a really excellent in-depth interview. He even talked to me for a few minutes about the visuals, which is not something most reviewers ever ask about. So he really has
Right.
done a great job of digging deep on this particular release, as he does. He supports us quite a bit. So yeah, so
Indeed.
so to Ben Bell and anyone else who's interested, for sure, go to Echo's site and check that out, and also be sure to see what else John does, because he really does. He spares no expense with his time, I think. So yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
We have more than one person asking about your influences. Maybe since we're going to jump around a little, maybe you can both talk about that quickly. Just in general, you know, it's inevitable someone's going to ask you who your biggest influences are. So, Deborah, why don't you go first?
Sure.
Oh, I actually have many influences. I'll just say I'm pretty much an external processor, and so I react and are affected by anything that surrounds me in nature. I could be in a grocery store and be looking at something, and all of a sudden I'll go, oh my God, I've got this idea, and then I'll run home and work on it. As far as musical artists for inspiration, I grew up listening to just about every style of music on the planet. My father had an extensive music collection, and I've listened to a lot of classical music, and all the modern artists, and just anything. But currently, I will say I really am inspired by what Lorena McKennitt has done with her music, and Enya. They're women who have gone outside the box, so to speak, in terms of what they're creating. And Kate Bush, very influential. I love what she did and what she has done in music. Those are things. But then again, I love Uriah Heep, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I love that kind of music too. I mean, there's so much music out there, and certain passages or melodies always get me. But when I'm writing music, I try not to think about any of the music I've heard, because I really want to try and make it something different. Inspiring, yes, but what can I do that I'm hearing based on things I'm looking at, or people I meet, or places I've traveled? It's a pretty vast list of influences. I think all of us are influenced by many things in our world. Wherever we happen to live or travel, or people we meet, we get influenced by all of it. And I try to, kind of like making a cake, I put all the ingredients together and something comes out of it, and I'll bake. Yeah. So we were cooking on this album, right,
yeah,
Dean?
We've used the baking a cake metaphor before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a strange up.
Yeah, it's strange, all right. You talked a little bit before about, you know, Dean showed up at the studio and played parts, and you processed them in your work approach a little bit. But I think we've got one question. Daniel Coppins is asking, did you send files to each other to, you know, sort of volley back and forth throughout the process, or no? It was only in studio work? Yeah.
It was all
This was all. So I'll explain the process really quick. We had a 3-day jam session in Deborah's studio, where I set up my laptop. She had her synthesizers, and we improvised a bunch of ambient kind of, you know, just ambient improvisations together. And then I left, and she spent 2 years editing it into what you hear. And she did a great job.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent.
Was it really only 3 days, Dean?
I think so. I might have only been 2, or maybe it was 3.
We did spend a little more time.
Yeah, we did. I was there for a week.
Yes.
So yeah, it could have been more than 3 then.
Yeah.
I don't know why I remember it being 3. That's weird. I was there for a week. So
yeah.
Damon is asking. Damon's asking a question. Do you have any? Did you have any preconceived solos you played before you got to Deborah's studio, Dean? Or did you have any idea what you were going to contribute, or did you listen first and then respond? Or
so that's a great question for like people who may not know or understand what I do as a musician. I've been a specialist in improvisation most of my life, well, a good chunk of my adult life, and I teach improvisation. So and I run a band that's based in improvisation. It's very much it's 60-70% of what I do, and where my true love of music is improvisation.
It's the Stratus ensemble, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yes, which is a whole band of people doing what I do, which is what we believe makes it so powerful. And so, yeah, it's purely just going on the knowledge of music that I have and showing up and plugging in my instrument and going, following my ear. I'm ear trained, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Excellent. So one thing I wanted to ask about me, I wanted to ask you this question. This comes from a conversation you two recorded, in Deborah's living room, and it's footage that we've been, piecing little snippets together to share with folks. But a piece of that jumped out at me that I wanted to ask about was the idea you talked about. I think Dean, you brought it up, that you made this music keeping in mind what would people think generations from now when they dig it up, right? So they're digging up this archive and they find it. And can you say a little bit more about that idea? I'm not sure who brought it up, and I'm not even sure where the conversation went, but can you talk about that idea?
I might have brought it up, but for this particular project, I have a stronger feeling about that regarding both of our solo material. So for this particular project, I might have brought it up in one of our conversations, but it's not particularly how I feel about it. But I know that Deborah kind of feels that way about it. She kind of expounded on that. So maybe she wants to do that again.
It might have been a general idea, just in terms of, knowing that you guys are making this music with that idea that someday somebody's going to dig this up and they're going to listen back and they're going to wonder, about it, and different aspects of it that you brought to the music, and what was happening, culturally and in your lives as musicians that you bring to bear on the project.
If they dig up this particular project, they're going to notice, if they're, say, in a class that's this is figuratively, of course, but they're in a musical appreciation class, so to speak, generations from now, and they're studying ambient music, or they're studying electronic music of our time, and they wander upon this unlikely combination of styles of ambient music, and they say, oh, well, there was some individuality going on back there. I don't know. It's a little, it's kind of abstract in my mind too, so it's coming out that way. That's really all I can. I can't even really remember the context that I brought it up in the original interview that we were doing, but it is an interesting notion, that one would dig up our work years from now, and what they might think.
Bruce wanted me to, wanted us to pass on to you, Dean. He's always enjoyed your travels to extreme landscapes.
Oh, man. Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. Oh, did you want me to expound on that?
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because that's actually like something you take pretty seriously, right? Didn't you spend some time in Deborah's neck of the woods, like last year, even doing some traveling? And
I did. Actually, every year, pretty much in the Portland area. For the last 10 years, for the last decade, I've been coming to Portland, spending the summer in the Portland area, because that's how much time and dedication it's taken to try to reach the top of even just Mount Hood, because I was trying to get to the top of all the Cascades and make electronic music at the top. Luckily, I was able to succeed with Mount Hood and Mount St. Helens, but I still have Mount Shasta to go, and I'm going to try for Rainier. Yeah, these are huge undertakings. And when I started this project 10 years ago, it was probably 11 years ago now, actually, I was recording myself making music all around the country this way. And it was so involving. No one could have foreseen the level of adversity that I would meet to try to get any of it done. People were saying, well, it sounds challenging, go for it. But this was a whole other thing. And, while I was trying to recover from the obstacles and broadcast, or I should say, post the stuff online, share things, life would go by. And before I knew it, it became a popular thing. And now lots of people out there are doing this. They're making music in all kinds of outdoor locations. And they seem to have mastered it as a craft more than I could at the time that I started this, because I didn't have a point of reference to go on. I was the only one, as far as I knew, who was hiking out in the middle of nowhere with a laptop and trying to actually make sense of this. So my own project kind of superseded me and became something else. And I don't even think the people famous for it right now are aware of me at all. So it's been a strange thing to deal with, and I'm still in the middle of it after all that. Right. So we'll see. It's supposed to be for a film later, and I'm hoping that I'll finish it soon enough that I can even start working on that.
Deborah, one thing I know we're going to need to talk about is the meaning behind the name Desensitized. I heard you explain it to John DiLiberto, and you did a great job. Can you explain it again? Like, why are you calling this project that, and what does it mean to you?
Okay. All right, Dean, here goes. Because we wanted to have a name that was copacetic with the song names and then their English translations in this language. We wanted something that would be, I thought of the name, this is kind of funny, but I'm going to say it again. John thought it was really funny. I came up with the name Desentiri, Daesenteri, Desentiri. And I asked Dean about it when he was with me. We were listening to what we had recorded and everything. And I said, what do you think of the name Desentiri? Because it's got the letter D in it. Both of our names begin with a D. And he just kind of had this look on his face, and he was looking at me for a second. And I go, you don't like it? And he goes, no, it's really cool, Deborah, but it sounds like dysentery. And he didn't want to have the name dysentery because most people would probably say that. And we started laughing so hard. I said, okay, all right, we have to come up with something else then. We won't use that. I'm sorry. Even though I was trying to pronounce it Desentiri, he said, no, that won't work. So I said, okay, let's use Desensitized. And he said, I like that, right? You did like that. So, and then we started to talk about what, if we use the name Desensitized, why would we want to use that name, and what does that mean? Because that word has an awful lot of meanings. We didn't know, other than the fact that with everything that was going on around the planet over the last year or two, there's a lot of different energies going on, a lot of terrible things, a lot of folks hurting, and a lot of that kind of stuff. But not only that, the technology age, the modern technology age over the last many years, it actually started probably back around in the 50s, but it's gotten more and more and more. We've got such a glut of stuff out in the world that's thrown at us every second of every day that we have become desensitized to the simple things of life. In other words, you hear so much about people getting shot and all this that you become numb to it. That it doesn't, when you hear another announcement of some terrible tragedy, it's like, oh, well, it's just par for the course, that kind of energy. So we decided to use that name not because of that, but because we want to undo the desensitization of what's happening to people. We need to become sensitive again to our surroundings and to other people and feelings and being kind and try and undo some of the angst that's experiencing. And Dean says it much better than I can, but I'm just talking about the emotional part of it. But that's really what we're trying to do, is make a statement that using that name, it's actually more the opposite of it. This music is designed to make you more sensitive to the world around you, to become part of something that's much bigger than any of us will ever be. Why this music it's otherworldly, it's universal, it's timeless music. I think anybody that were to dig this up, if we put the master out in the desert somewhere, in 100 years, somebody will dig it up and they'll hear it and they'll go, oh, this music, it is wonderful. I mean, because really it is got a timeless quality to it, I think. That's the magic of what we did. I'm so pleased with what we did. I can't tell you enough how happy and ecstatic I am that Dean and I got to work together, and we will be working together on a couple other projects. So with that same concept in mind. I hope that
same moniker.
Yeah, I hope that answers it but Dean has other comments on the word desensitized as well. You said it beautifully, Dean, in one of our interviews, but that's how the name came about anyway.
Sure. Yeah. Again, like, that's what makes this project so interesting, is that Deborah and I are coming from two completely different places, parallel universes, and somehow they collide in this one dimension, and it's like, it becomes desensitized. So my thing is, I love, when it comes to anything artistic, I love generalizations. I don't think generalizations are appropriate in relation to judging people and dynamics about reality, but when it comes to our creative side and the artistic way of looking at the world, I love general phrases and concepts, and concepts like desensitized, like desensitization. And so to Deborah, I totally get that that's what it means. Kind of those two, the juxtaposition of being, of where we are as a society, and kind of how kind of sad or tragic in a certain sense it is that we're desensitizing, versus the aesthetic of it. To me, to be alive, to exist, is to be a limited being, and that means that you have to desensitize to a countless amount of things, just to keep from going mad, because the amount of stimulus that's actually hitting us all the time, right. Being people who, beings who possess a body, would be overwhelming if we didn't desensitize to it. Probably from the moment we're born is when that process starts. Mm-hmm. So it had a universality to it that I really liked, and also, I tend to gravitate towards the slightly shadowy side of aesthetics. I'm not quite as, I like pretty things too, or what we would deem as pretty as a culture, but I gravitate to the darker things a lot, and so the name appealed to me for that also. It's probably my goth roots. I don't know, some slight goth roots.
Excellent.
I was never that, I was never like a punker, but
no.
He's like, nah, man, that's obvious.
Where are you sitting right now, Dean? We've got a few people asking whether you're in space or where are you sitting? Where are you coming to us from?
I just, like, I know we decided that my black background would have the last word, but I don't know. We did a little rigmarole at the last minute, and I was like, oh yeah, there's that light.
Great.
Let's do that. I'm just in my studio. It's kind of a bedroom-sized studio, and this is where I live and work a lot of the time. Ever since, to be honest, ever since the travel project we were talking about started a decade ago, my home has been in a lot of different places, including on the road, working in my car, working in tents, out in the middle of nowhere, and staying with friends, staying with family, staying everywhere. But I seem to be settled in Los Angeles at the moment. So yeah, this is where I am.
So maybe the next question is one I can ask to both of you. What do you want us to remember most about HEMISPHERICA PORTALIS, like this particular project, this collaboration between the two of you? What do you most want us to remember about it?
That's a good one. They're all good ones, but Deb, you want to do that one?
Well, we both could do it, but I want people to remember the beauty of it, the depth of it. Where does it take you when you hear the music? Where do you go with it? And can you hold on to that thought or feeling once you've heard the music? And if you're looking at the beautiful artwork that goes with it, the artwork, I think, represents that there is beauty everywhere, no matter where you go or no matter what you see in the world or the universe or anywhere. It doesn't have to be just on the earth. It could be anywhere. But there is beauty that surrounds us. And I think I'd want you to take that sense with you, and that the music would somehow imbue itself into you, and you would become a part of this fantastical world, and give you a sense of belonging.
Dean?
The hopeful piece.
I like it. Yeah, if it gives anyone a sense of belonging or solace or release or relief, that's of course what I hope, that, in that sense, I hope that our music is a utility. It can be used in very practical and very practical ways. If it calms people, but I'll also just for me personally, this this project was kind of my own personal slap in the face to the idea of artistic elitism, which has really continually reared its ugly head throughout my career, throughout my adult life. I've had just as many reasons to be snobby about what I do as anybody, and to feel like, well, I'm not going to work with somebody who doesn't, think the way I think. Or I'm not even going to talk to that person, because they're the enemy if they're confusing the public about what I do. So, and this is the way, so many, I hate to say it, but so many artists tend to think that the entire world of art on planet Earth is plagued with this attitude. It's the what we tap into to be creative somehow causes these side effects of horrible misplaced ego that makes us feel like we're supposed to be understood, and we're never going to be understood enough, and we're going to be understood even less if we combine our efforts and our visions with the visions of others who represent something totally different. I think it's more, the world of art personally should be more about unity than it is. And so to me, it was like, well, Deborah is an artist I really respect. She's a craftsman. She prides herself in that craft. I like her music, and I listen to it, based on these premises. That's like, well, it's not what I would do, but I like it because it really takes me somewhere. This person puts a lot of thought into what they do. So it doesn't have to be my genre. It doesn't have to they don't have to be my principles. It's just the fact that I love this person and I admire what she does, and it happens to be the same field, music, So let's get together and make something,
Right.
you know, and yeah, that's the spirit behind it for me, and I hope that it stands for that, really, in general, you know.
I think anyone who would listen to either of your solo projects and maybe track along with that and listen back to what you've done individually, and then listen to this
Absolutely.
collaboration would probably, hopefully see alignment with what you're saying, right? I mean, that's exactly it. You know, two people that come from
Absolutely.
dramatically different musical stylistic backgrounds, but found common ground in some way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a question I was going to ask before, and I'm actually seeing people talk about it now in the chat. But Deborah, maybe you can talk for a second about the idea of deep listening and what exactly does that mean? Maybe to you personally, if you want to just talk about it from that perspective. But what does it mean to listen deeply to anything?
Oh, well, for someone who's a deep listener or wants to do what is called deep listening, for me, it's a very strong awareness and immersive listening experience. You're immersing yourself and becoming what the music is doing. Music is just magical to me. I never question what comes out when I'm creating something, because the music will tell you what it wants or what it needs. But if you're deep listening, it's almost like you're in the Matrix, let's say. You're going deep, you're deep diving, you're becoming one of the little tiny chips that weaves in and out of what's going on, the rhythmic structures, the melodic elements, the ambient sounds, the textures. It's almost like you're in a gigantic hoagie sandwich that's got multiple layers in it, and you're
being eaten.
Yeah, you're going through the layers. You're like, okay, I'm going into the pepperoni now. Oh, I need to go deeper. What's that sauce? And then you go down to that, and then you're like, wait a minute, what kind of bread is this anyway? And what's the who put that salt and pepper? I mean, literally, if you're, I'm trying to give an analogy of where would your mind go, and this is also something that I think is very important. Music in any of the art forms for anyone on the planet is extremely subjective to the individual. You can have a million people listen to the track HEMISPHERICA PORTALIS and do a survey and ask every one of them, what did that sound like? And you're going to get back a million different responses, because each person's processing in the body from their listening experience is different. It's going to be, there'll be some similar responses and things, but they're going to be very individualized also. And it's the same with deep listening. If you're really wanting to go deep in any music whatsoever, I don't care if it's this music or any genre out there, even rock and roll, or I mean anything, you're going to immerse yourself to the point of where you actually would disappear. And you're just like in the Matrix, you're disappeared into that music, and you're going to feel it. You're going to have an emotional response or a reaction to it, sometimes very visceral. I've listened to there's music that I listen to even today that I'll hear a passage, and it just, every time I listen to it, it's gut-wrenching. Gustav Holst, The Planets, okay? There's some of the tracks from that. Every time I hear certain passages, it just takes me to that planet or to that space. And it's because of the phrasing. The phrasing is so important in the music, and it will lead you there. Even if you're not even aware of it, you're going to get led there and taken there anyway. So deep listening allows that, I think. And it's not a task. It's not something that you have to force yourself to do. I think if the music lends itself to that kind of a leaning, you're going to automatically get a deep listen to it. Some people love listening to music on headphones because they say they get the actual deep experience from that. I think that that's their way of being able to focus on it. In a lot of times, they when wearing that headset, it puts them in that mindset, in that space to actually do it and just become part of the music. I hope my answer is clear enough. There's so many aspects to that to
Sure, and it might mean different things to different people. And to me, it seems
Yes.
like it's very different. Deep listening is like the opposite of casual listening, right? It's like you're driving and you're listening in your car, but you're not sitting
Yes.
down deliberately with the intention to listen to the only thing you've tasked yourself with is to sit down and listen to that piece of music. And that's very different than doing it while you're passing time or keeping your ears busy while you're cooking or driving or talking with friends, right? So that music is sort of in the background and almost meaningless to you. So you put aside every other agenda you might have with the sole purpose of just listening carefully to the music that's in front of you and doing nothing else, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, totally different experience. It's funny how, those are the two main ways that we experience pre-recorded music, right? It's either a mood supplier or it's something that you immerse yourself in. And the same music is used for both purposes. And so, yeah, I mean, this music is no exception. The music we make, ambient music in general, is no exception to that. I mean, everybody knows it provides a mood. And it's a less intrusive mood, so it actually helps people to concentrate, and they're just now realizing that they can work and study and do all these, carry out all these tasks that usually involve deep concentration with this type of music on in the background, because it only helps you to maintain that focus. So, but if you immerse yourself in what we do, you'll hear all kinds of things. There's a lot of textures and dynamics that we pride ourselves in utilizing for it. So, and a lot of our heart goes into it.
Yeah. Well, I know I can hear that. When I was sent this music for the first time to think about like the visuals that were going to accompany it, I was really taken by how much of each of you I could hear in it, but putting those two things together, putting Deborah and Dean together in almost the same room, it was amazing to me to be able to hear those two worlds get together. So yeah, I mean, it definitely took me individually to a place that I was pleasantly surprised and did not expect it. So I hope others feel the same way. Yeah.
Us too, yeah. By the way, Daniel's he's the man. This guy, I think he's a better illustrator designer than even he knows. We're working on him. He's gonna realize it. He's pretty modest.
I just make pictures.
He's pretty modest. Yeah, there he goes. A lot of the album covers for Spotted are just amazing, and like I find that they inspire music in and of themselves. The imagery inspires music, and it's a very cyclical and circulatory thing. The influence between auditory perception and visual perception, and I think that's an understated phenomenon, especially in this genre.
Yeah, I think that I told John DiLiberto this when he asked me. I don't know if he included it in his interview, but I only really have one rule. Like when it comes to like my role in helping artists like you complete their project, like I'm just there to really extend your art to the visual space, right? And to complete the story in a sense. And my only rule is to just make sure that while I'm working on your project that I have to be listening to it. I give myself, I'm really rigid about that, and I give myself that one single rule. And I think when I do that, I'm always in the space of what you all create, so that I'm sure that I'm in alignment with it. And that's really the only rule I have. And so far it's really worked out well. I mean, I stay almost like in step with what you're doing, so the whole project seems like one cohesive piece. And that's always been my goal. But thanks for saying that. Thanks for saying that you can see that. It means
yeah, man. Some of your past album covers still inspire me a little to go for a certain sound. I'm not saying it's an overt influence. I'm just saying that it really it matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Well,
I think it was very important for the artwork for this album because of the fact that it was so otherworldly, and Daniel is fantastic with everything that he does, and I thank him all the time, but I'm saying it again, thank you. It's almost he actually, I think, becomes the music a lot of the times when he's working on not just our project but on all the projects, because he immerses, he does the immersive listening to the music, right. And then from that, whatever comes out of it translates into the visuals. Mm-hmm. And the only other thing, what's so important about music itself, not to get too scientific, but sound waves, music itself, it's the only time that the human brain will open up the left and the right sides. And so when you're doing immersive listening, you're really opening your brain up to everything, both because the left and right sides do not work together ever unless you've got a sound wave or something going there. And that was very... when you're working with autistic children and other things like that, that's very important to know. And but because of that, your mind just becomes open. And so the visual aspects of it, that's why it's so important that we get our visuals to thematically match what the music is doing, so that if you are doing immersive or deep listening and you're looking at imagery, it does tie in together and it doesn't confuse you as to what you're listening to. That would be like going to eat a grape and it's one of those little tomatoes. You get a totally different shock, like that's not what I thought it was going to be. Well, it can be very much the same with artwork and music. If the album, you buy an album because you like artwork, and then you hear the music and you're like, well, that's not what I thought it would sound like. And so I think that's a very important aspect of what we do. Amazing analogy. Very important. So Daniel's a master at doing that.
Thanks
for
saying that. It means a lot.
Yeah.
Malcolm Curry is asking, what software do I use to create the animation? So it really depends. Like when I create the visuals for these shows, like it's very much a mix. Sometimes I find footage in collections that we've got access to that are perfect, and other times, like for 99% of what you see in this particular show, for all the visuals that I put together for this release for you, is, I would say, heavily edited, and there are some touches of custom animation that I've added into it. But I mean, my skill set's limited, so in the video space, but I manage enough to put together things that feel right, and that align themselves with the music. So with this particular platform that we're building with, streaming, it's visuals and audio together, right? And so it has become yet another medium where we're extending the stories that we're telling in the artwork that we create for your art, for your musical project, right? So every single one of the pieces I put together for these shows and for other shows are all about just an extension of that story in the video space. So mostly it's work within the tools that are just sort of native on my Mac. So it's either iMovie, but I've been doing a lot more recently with After Effects. So putting together more of the custom work when I've got to composite things together and add animation and other touches. So I've started to push into that space too, which has been interesting and a little scary. I won't lie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I feel you there. I just learned After Effects.
It's very deep, but I did work in other, timeline-based animation, throughout my career that I took to it, but it's very, very deep. It's like Photoshop, but in a moving timeline. So it's really, really deep. And I get inspiration from a lot of others that I see doing the work in that space that really inspire me. So yeah, I'm always pushing to learn more. So.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything else for you two unless anyone else does. So I mean, we have 4 more tracks to hear. So why don't you? Do you have anything else to say before I move on, or
Probably think of it after we sign out, of course.
that's okay. Drop it in the chat.
Big ups on Deborah's getup, man. Yeah, we're looking choice today.
Yeah, octopus.
You can always count on Deborah
man.
to keep it low key.
She yeah, I mean, like I just look shady, but she looks like a raver, like the old rave culture. You know?
Oh, no. I was trying to look otherworldly, and I brought a couple of creatures because of the Hemispherica. Daniel did such a great job on some neat-looking creatures, so I brought Mr. Octopus here, and then there's Fergus the Frog behind me with a art gallery thing of the album, like it's on a little easel. And that's it. But I would like to say for all of the listeners out there and everyone that supports Spotted Peccary music and all of our artists, I want to say a very wonderful thank you to all of you. From me, from Dean, I know, from all of the Spotted Peccary team, we work really hard at trying to get this art out there, and we really try to push the envelope as much as we can with what we can. And it's just so nice to have comments back from folks that buy the music or listen to it and come back and say, wow, this really helped me. I was having a bad day and I listened to this and it just took me someplace else and I was able to see things more clearly. Or, you know, those are the kinds of things, that's what makes this worthwhile. When we hear back from folks that say that they really love the music, it helps them through their day, or they just love relaxing to it, or it just brightens their day. It gives them this hopeful piece again. All of the music, that's what music is about. Music as art, music is art. That's what we, are about. And this is our 35th year as an independent record label, and I'm so proud of all the artists and everyone that's worked so hard for this, and we'll keep doing it up. And I do want to mention one individual who I've known for many years being on the label, and that's my friend Matthew Stewart. He is just an incredible musician, an incredible artist, and I've gotten to work with him. He worked with me on some of my earlier albums, but he was very instrumental in mixing Hemispherica Portalis. And then I had to do some stuff after because we were going back and forth, but he did all of that. And on another project I'm doing, and on one of my other albums, he mixed it. So he's just so talented. And I don't know if he's here with us tonight, but if he is, Matthew, I love you dearly. You're wonderful. And thank you for all that you do too. I know he's working on another project too. And
he hears you. He hears you and he says he loves you too.
He's a fantastic man. For everybody, he is there.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
But for everyone that's here and listening, thank you so much for everything that you do for us and the artist, and for supporting what we're trying to do here. It's really tough on a lot of folks right now because of the COVID thing, all the restrictions. You can't do live performance, really. It's very difficult. But we started to, Daniel worked really hard on this with John Jenkins, incredible musician also. They worked really hard to put this together for us. And Andrew, I want to thank Andrew and Howard and Ben. I mean, these are the folks that make this happen so that we can get the art out to everyone. And I can't say enough about it because all of the artists are incredible. We are like a big family of peccaries running around the planet, sharing with each other and helping each other with the music. And that's what I think our music is a little better than what a peccary would do musically.
Yeah, maybe.
A little bit better than that.
Well,
okay.
And before we move on, I'll just say that what you touched on, that we are in this space now where people are, they're really jonesing for seeing live music again, and they can't go to see their favorite concerts or their favorite artists who have come through town on a tour. They can't see it. Everything has changed, right? So that is the reason why we've started to push into this space, to put this all together, to say, we can't all be together doing, what we want to do, but we're able to at least reach out a little further by doing this. And so we have some serious plans, and I hope everyone will stay tuned in, because we are really pushing hard to to go into some new territory for us, and it will look a lot like, you know, live performances, and but in this space. So stay tuned, because we're figuring it out, and it's important to us to be able to share it. So
Daniel, I would like to say one more thing, only because, and not to be feminist and not to be gender biased or any of that stuff, but you know, there really aren't a lot of women doing this kind of music. I wish there was more.
Yeah.
But there are women out there that are doing this. There's wonderful radio personalities. Renee Blanche, she plays our music, and she's in Kansas. But there's a woman that I want to especially thank, who is part of our Spotted Peccary team and who has done a lot for us over the last couple of years. She works with our artists too, and that's Beth Hilton. Beth, I'm sure you're out here somewhere floating. She does social media things, but she reaches out to all of us as artists and has a very nice sensitivity to talk to us about what our dreams and visions are, what are our goals, what do we want to accomplish with our music, and then she comes up with some creative things for us to do. Of course, she didn't come up with the octopus and my Fergus frog stuff. That's all me, unfortunately, my craziness. But she's just brilliant with everything. Sure. And I want to make sure to thank her, because she's a very important part also of our team. There's a few of us that do everything, and Beth is very sweet, and I just love her too, and she's really special for the things that she helps us do, trying to get what can we do as a label to get out there to more folks who, when people find our music, they're going, oh my God, you guys have been around for forever. How come I didn't know about you before? Well, Beth's helping us to answer that question to the folks out there, to get more people. And I guess word of mouth, or people find us and they go, oh my God, and then they get all of our albums because it helps them, or they love the music and they like having something that they can just listen to. And you know, it's just interesting to see all of those things come about, and we have a lot more to come. I know that we have an awful lot more to come down the pike. We're all working on other projects. Dean's working on his third album solo project with us that I can't wait. I'm so excited when he gets it finished, and I'm working with some other artists as well, but Dean and I are going to be starting pretty soon on our second album, so it'll be I'm looking forward to it, Dean. It'll be so much fun. We're going to get together
I'm sure
again.
Everyone's looking forward to it. Yeah.
So thanks again to everyone. Thank
you. Thanks to all the listeners, and I'm all about shout outs. I love shout outs. Yeah, thanks to everyone at Spotted who makes this possible, and Chris, Deborah's husband Chris, does a lot.
He's there somewhere.
I just really appreciate it.
He's back there somewhere. I know he is.
He's hiding.
He's in his office.
He's got the right idea.
He's on his computer watching the stream.
Good for him. It's a bashful day. This is the first time you guys have done this, so we're just kind of like, I got a hat on.
I was.
It's safe.
I was going to open with that and say, like, this is the first time that, well, since Jenkins and Helpling did those awesome podcasts from Deep Exile, right? I mean, those were epic.
Yeah. Oh man.
But this is probably the first time anyone's heard any of our voices outside of radio interviews, right? So, it's
right.
Yeah, it's out of our comfort zone. But we're doing it.
Yeah,
definitely. Definitely out of our comfort. Yeah, we're doing it.
All right.
So thank you all for tuning in, whoever all of you were.
Yeah. Well, so thanks to you both for taking time out of your lives and doing it. So hopefully Absolutely. You can stay tuned in while we listen to the last 4 tracks. So I'm gonna take a quick second and to get dialed back in. And I'll get back into the music in just a minute. Okay.
Thank you, Daniel. Yes, I want to listen and watch the show.
Thanks everybody else. Thanks for your questions. And make sure while I have everyone's ears, make sure you make sure you're subscribed and following and all those things, because we want to be sure that you get notifications when we do this again. So. All right. All right, Dean, Deborah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks again, everyone.
Bye.